Happy Monday, everyone. Hope you had a good weekend. It's time for another edition of Mansplaining the Masters. Today we're talking about the artist Wayne Thiebaud, and in particular, we're talking about his still life paintings of repeating objects. This approach makes up a whole body of work for him, and these are probably his most famous paintings, largely because they got lumped in with pop art back in the 1960s. I think because the aesthetic was very similar to Andy Warhol's soup cans, but Wayne Thiebaud did not consider himself a pop artist. I think he saw himself more in the tradition of kind of Giorgio Morandi as a modern still life painter, but still rooted in tradition. So when you have a motif like this, where there are multiple objects and those objects are essentially identical, one way to make the arrangement less static is to use an approach called differentiation, which means you make a slight adjustment to one of the parts while keeping the other parts as similar as possible. In this painting, there's an obvious difference in the pattern on the sticks. Also, the highlight on the center apple is very clear and has a lot of contrast, so that kind of designates that center apple as the primary apple, and the other two are secondary. When you use this technique of differentiation, it can be very obvious and not subtle, but you can also temper the differentiation with a degree of subtlety to the point where it's almost undetectable. Here it is in a less subtle form. Obviously, the chocolate frosting turns that cupcake into the focal point because it's the least similar to the other three cupcakes, and the dark brown chocolate color contrasts very strongly with the white background. Here you can see what it looks like when there's almost no differentiation. The composition is more static, it's more stable, there's less of a hierarchy and emphasis, and the intervals, the space between the objects, is nearly identical. One of my favorite examples of differentiation in a painting is this. I'm also thinking about this because it's Thin Mint season right now. When we zoom in and take a closer look at the highlights on the cookies, each one is unique, but this highlight is clearer and sharper than the others, making a very subtle focal point out of 5 objects that are identical. It's similar to the effect we talked about a few months ago in that Edward Hopper painting, where he used the highlights on the stairs to achieve a similar movement. The highlight on the top stair is the sharpest, and the highlight on the bottom stair is the softest. So that's differentiation. Sounds a bit nerdy, but it's pretty easy to do with a little practice and a little attention. I'm going to talk a little more about this in my class coming up, the Rule of 3, and I have a link to register on my website if you're interested. Have a great week, everyone.